Hello, and thanks for joining my webinar. This webinar is on tips for your job interview. The content is actually taken from my free course on essential interview tips. My in-depth course includes downloads, checklists, and exercises to help your next interview be a success. Your interview, whether it's online or in person, will help show your communication skills, your problem-solving skills, and your work style. It's an important step to hone those skills and practice so that you can shine the next time you're in front of a hiring manager. This overview will cover many areas, and it's my hope that you will do your absolute best on your very next interview. So grab a cup of coffee, some tea, pen and paper, and let's get started. My background as a project manager leading global teams since 2017, mainly team members who didn't report to me. So communications is always a key component of my work. Worked with team members in Costa Rica, Prague, and Singapore, and managing various areas such as IT, automotive, automation, and life sciences. An overview of this webinar, I'm going to review essential skills for your next job interview, including preparation for the job interview, what to do and not do during the job interview, post-interview actions, and your follow-up. Separately, there's a free course that I created that covers job interview essentials, and it goes more in depth on each topic I'm going to cover today. I also have free practice session packages that will give you immediate feedback and my first impressions going through a mock interview process. But for now, let's talk about some essential tips for your next job interview. I want you to think about leveling up when comparing yourself to all the other candidates. For the most part, you're going to be a blank slate walking in to your interview because the hiring manager has no idea what your approach to work or attitude is like. Your experience is important, but how you carry yourself in a work environment is more important. There are simple actions you can do that will help you rise above and stand out from all the other candidates. The first one is probably the easiest one, and that's company research. It's important not to go into an interview clueless about what the company does, to be like the average person or the average candidate. You can impress the hiring manager with your knowledge, basic knowledge of what the company does. You can start with going to the company website and reading their About Us page, looking at the leadership team or the management on the website, and even see if they have a foundation or maybe a community page to see what's really important to them. Another thing you can do if the company is a public company is to look for their SEC report or Security Exchange Commission report. Every public company is required to publish an annual report with the Security Exchange Commission about how they did that year. The annual report also includes the properties that they own, the business lines that they carry, the C-level staff, and their financial health. It also has any lawsuits that they might be involved in. This may not be information that you would bring up during the interview, but it is good background to have in case the hiring manager happens to mention anything that's in that report. You will be way ahead of any candidate that did not bother to look at it. One thing to note about the annual reports, there's usually two different kinds. One is the SEC or the Formal Security Exchange report. Another one is a friendlier version with pictures of the company, graphics, and it's more colorful, more like a magazine type report. That report is often on the company website, whereas the SEC report may be a link on their investor version of their website. I encourage you to take a look at both. Don't be late. This is another area where you may be able to rise above other candidates. Many people are late to their interviews. This shows your ability to plan ahead, to prioritize things that are important. So you don't want to be late to your job interview. Easy way to fix this is to do a dry run if your meeting is in person a couple days before. So you know exactly where to go, exactly where to park. If you need change or money or a card to park, a meter, etc. You don't want to wait until the day of your interview to find out that you need to go to a different location for your job interview, and then that will make you late. If you're doing a Zoom call, make sure your computer is ready to go. Go on to Zoom and test your volume and your video if that's required. If you have a Zoom interview, Zoom has a test site where you can test your volume and your video so you can be prepared on the day of your Zoom interview. Make sure you do that the day before and not the morning of. And if you are late, things happened. Just make sure you call your contact and give them an accurate ETA of when you can have your interview. If it's very late, you might want to see if you can simply reschedule. Bottom line is you're showing how you plan and how you are aware of risk when you are late or on time to your job interview. First impressions. I have seen so many people come to an interview not dressed properly, especially for a corporate interview. You don't want to show up in a casual sweatshirt and jeans. You want to have nice, conservative, neat and clean attire. And you want to match the business that you're applying for. All experiences being equal, who do you think the hiring manager is going to select? So it's a word of caution to you if you think that the company's going to be cool with your cool clothes. You want professional attire that matches or maybe it is a little bit above the formality of the company that you're applying for. So for instance, if you're going to apply for a law firm, whether you're going to be a lawyer or a legal assistant, you want to dress like the people who work there. If you're going to work at a retail store, then you can dress a little more casually, but you don't want to dress casually. You want to still have a belt, maybe a jacket still would not be out of place. You might not do a three-piece suit, but you definitely want to have a nice shirt and nice shoes and slacks. I would never suggest jeans. Now, if you're applying for an artistic job, that might be an exception, but you want to make sure and get the intel first on someone that already works there, or maybe go and observe to see what the dress is like. Did they notice? This section in my free course talks about things that people notice that you may not think they're noticing, or you just may not be aware of. For instance, in an in-person interview, when you hand them your resume, how do your nails look? Maybe you're an 11 o'clock interview and the hiring manager walks you out to your car. How does your car look? These little things are important and they reflect on, again, your preparation for your interview, which would obviously flow to how you're going to be working for that company. Some other things that you want to avoid is fidgeting, twisting or curling on your hair, excessive commenting, uh-huh, uh-huh, you don't want to do that. You want to be relaxed and you want to have a conversation. They're interviewing you and you're also interviewing them. You also want to be careful about having too relaxed of a position with your body. Now the questions. So tell me about yourself. An open-ended question that seems like a trap. Really, they're looking for a few things. One, what are your basic communication skills? Two, are you able to link what's relevant to your delivery? In other words, you're in a job interview. If I say, tell me about yourself, I'm expecting you to tell me about your job experiences. I don't want you to start with high school or college unless it's relevant. It's not a trap question. It's just a very important question that you need to practice answering. And the only way you get good at it is through practice. You want to record yourself, practice with your friends and family, and make sure that you practice with the job title in mind. You want to make sure that you answer questions succinctly and answer the questions that are asked. You never want to hear the hiring manager ask you the same question twice. Why? It means you didn't really answer it in their view the first time. And you also never want to hear them say, that's not what I asked you. Practice active listening skills, which means if I asked you, what did you do in this particular job? You actually tell me about that job, not about a different job and not about a different skill than what I asked. Pay close attention because it speaks to how you're going to be working for them in the future if they hire you. Other questions, such as give me 3 positives about yourself or give me 3 negatives about yourself. How do you handle conflict? What do you do when it comes to overtime? These questions are all about your working style. One tip on the questions for negatives. You often hear people say, oh, take a positive and pretend it's a negative and then turn it into a positive. That never works. What we're looking for is, have you learned anything from your work style that wasn't beneficial? Here's one example that's actually personal to me. I tend to give more information than that's needed. I just don't want to miss anything and I want to make sure you have everything. But how would I say that in an interview? Here's what I say. I tend to over communicate. So I have learned to put the most important information at the top or in the front, and then all of my discovery and my details in the back. That way I can highlight what's most important to you. Then if they come back with, well, what does that look like? I can say, for instance, when I have a PowerPoint, my first few slides are exactly on the topic at hand. And then in an appendix, I will put all of my discovery information. Now, what does this tell the hiring manager? Wow, she had a weakness, she identified it, she found a way to solve it, and she understood the importance of solving it. That shows I was able to not only identify, but also correct and be willing to change and do what's best for the company. At the end of the day, that's all the hiring manager is looking for. And that's their job, to hire people that will work best for the company. So make sure you use real examples and find an example of something that you've improved on over time. It can be something as simple as your email communications. Now let's talk about answers. You want to make sure that you make eye contact. And if you're asked a question you don't quite understand or you're not really clear what's being asked, make sure you get clarification before you answer. One example is someone might say, do you have experience with asset management? Well, asset management, they could be talking about financial asset management, or they could be talking about equipment asset management. It's important to get clarification. So you don't run off on a tangent explaining this perfect answer, and then the hiring manager says, oh, that's not what I meant. It shows that you're diligent in making sure your communication is clear. Also, don't be too familiar. This is an interview in a business setting. You want to be personable without being nosy. Avoid discussing salary. I've never been met with anything other than a salary range when I ask for a salary range. And then avoid discussing salary. If you walk into the interview room, sit down, and the first question is, what's your salary expectation? Do not answer that question. Instead, say, what's the range for this position? I've never once had someone not give me the range. When they do, say, you know what, that range is perfect. You don't want to get into the weeds about salary before you learn about the position. You want to show that you're interested in the work, the details of the position, and the company first. So you can simply say, before we get into that, I would like to hear more about the position. Or, as I said, what is the range for the position? So another way to ask. So another thing you can say is, before we get into that, I would like to hear more about the position. This is especially true if you're working with an agency. Never share the rate or the salary that they gave you. This jeopardizes the contract that the agency has with the company, and also may result in a lower offer which hasn't been discussed yet. It's a lose-lose for you any way you look at it. So just never share that information. Let's talk about caution and red flags. So throughout your career, you probably will have a couple interviews that aren't exactly a good fit. Trust your instincts on this. You have them for a reason. You may have, for instance, way too many personal questions. Maybe you went to the same school, you're a USC fan, or maybe a UCLA fan. That's probably fine. But if you start getting into discussing your family life, your kids, when you pick them up, when you take them to school, now that's kind of going into the weeds. A hiring manager needs to know that yes, you can be there at 8, and yes, you can work until 5 or 7 and 4, whatever the shift might be. But the personal details of how you get to work and how you leave do not need to be discussed in an interview. Some jobs are just not worth having, and some bosses and companies are just not worth working for. They don't deserve your effort in some cases. This includes MLMs, multi-level marketing, commission-only jobs, and outright scams. Jobs that you really feel like this may not be a good fit, pay attention to those feelings. Later on, I'm going to discuss a reflection exercise, and you should make sure that you go through that and not make any quick decisions on the spot during the interview. Share your experience with multiple people so you can get feedback and get confirmation on anything that you think might be out of sorts with your job interview. Maybe you were the opposite and you found that people kept asking you more and more questions, so you learned to elaborate a little more. Could be any number of things, but make sure you pick something that's real and personal that you can speak to. Wow, the interview's over. You shook hands, you're walking out, and you're done, right? Wrong. Not yet. After your interview, first of all, exhale. Give yourself a pat on the back. You've made it through another interview. If it's your first interview, congratulations. If you've had a few interviews, good job. You've learned something, I'm sure. So now is your time to find out what it was. Take a moment and write down how it went. What was the vibe like when you walked into the company? What was the feeling that you got from the hiring manager that you had the interview with? What questions were you asked and how did you answer them? What are some of the answers you wish you had said? What was your overall take on the interview process? These things are important because they will help you in your next interview, and you will eventually have a next interview. Hopefully not for some time, but you do want to learn from your experience. More importantly, you might have a second interview in a few days. So you do want to have that reflection already thought through. So find a coffee shop, a park, maybe sit in your car and think through while it's fresh in your mind everything that you want to write out. You also want to make sure that you thank the person, either in an email or a thank you note. Now, it's very easy to do a thank you note if you had an in-person interview because you already drove to the location, you have the address. And then if you had a Zoom call, you know the name of the company and the name of the person. So you can still send a thank you card and it eventually will get forwarded by their mailroom. How should your thank you card look? Just a few simple lines. Thank you for the interview. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss the XYZ job. And then you might want to add a few lines about something you talked about. This way they can connect your name on the card to the actual interview. Something like, I was pleased to find out about your initiative for automation, or just fill in the blank, whatever you might have talked about. And then you can just end it with, I look forward to our next steps, and then sign it. A really short 3x5 thank you card you can pick up at any retail store is fine. I can't tell you how many people, after I've been hired, mentioned my thank you cards. It's an important and memorable step. And you know what? Out of 5 candidates, only 1 will send a card. Make sure that that's you. Lastly, if you don't get hired, try to find out how you did on the interview. Now, sometimes a company doesn't really want to give the feedback. And so don't be put off if you just get, oh, everything was fine. We just found a different candidate. But sometimes you will get someone that will give you honest feedback. Take that feedback and improve on it. Take that feedback and look at it as a gift. Improve on it and do better on your next interview. Now, I mentioned my free courses a few times, so please take advantage of that. I don't need a phone number or anything like that, but they will dive a little bit deeper into all that I've talked about today in this webinar. I also have one on meeting facilitation after you get that job and end up having to facilitate your first meeting on your own. Now, if you would like in-person practice and immediate feedback, I do have practice packages where I can meet with you for just half an hour and we can do a mock interview session or meeting facilitation session, and you can practice and get immediate feedback on first impressions. This can be key information and insight that can give you a level up for your next interview or meeting. I also do one-on-one coaching for entry, mid, executive level, for any business communication you might have to do. I also have organizational services such as project management or walking you through the RFP process. And that's it. I hope you learned something on this webinar today. If you have any questions on anything that I've mentioned, feel free to reach out. Either email me directly at coach@breachrevelation.com or visit my website and check out the courses and practice sessions. Thank you for attending this webinar. I hope you have learned something that will help you on your next interview, and I hope you have a blessed day.